right, this video is part 2 of what is instructional design, or an introduction to instructional design. We're going to be talking about the instructional design processes, as well as like the types of things they design on a more theoretical scale. So just to start with, this was from a chapter in Design for Learning by Wagner here. And she identified 2 different schools of thoughts on design. One is this rational thought. So remember when we talked about design as being changing from what is to what is preferred? From a rational perspective, we're going to be optimizing the solution. So we try something, we have a state, we do something, and then we measure really clearly whether it improved or if it didn't, and then we revise. It takes a very specific process approach to instructional design, and that's really how a lot of traditional instructional design work got started, partly because they were working primarily for the military early on, and that was a common perspective to take. Recently, there's been more of an emphasis on this action-centric, and this is more like the common design thinking you might be hearing around and such. It's kind of the design thinking way of coming into instructional design, where we're focusing more on using creativity to find new ideas. We're still going to use data and analysis, but it's a more free-form way of designing. We're going to think more about what the actual problem is and if we can reframe it. And then we kind of just make up the design process along the way. So really, no design process is either rational or action-centric. It's always a mixture of the two. But the traditional, more rational models, a lot of the time they follow very specific processes, the most famous of which is ADDI. So ADDI stands for Analyze, Design, Develop, Implement, Evaluate. And early on, a lot of the time, it was represented in a very linear manner. This is the first thing we do, and then we do this, and then we do this. Now they're trying to say, look, it doesn't always go in that straightforward manner. Sometimes it circles back. Sometimes we do stuff and it all goes in different orders. But the main idea is that these are the core activities of instructional design and how we come up with instructional designs. So you'll hear about ADDI everywhere in instructional design. This is what it means. This is the Dick and Carey model. It's a little bit more of a backwards design model where you kind of identify the goals first, and then you kind of develop and revise instruction to meet the goals or the assessment pieces that you set up. This one, Assure, this is more used a lot with like K-12 teachers, where we're going to analyze learners, state our standards, select strategies, utilizing materials, require learner participation, and then evaluate and revise. So it's a little bit more of a teacher-focused, more focused for the person who will be actually implemented the design, works well with this Assure model. And then this is one that I actually really like that isn't seen quite as much, but it's called Pebble in the Pond. And what you do is you start out with what your design problem is. And I like to go even more specific, saying what is the overall thing that I'm trying to fix? What is the main idea or the main theme of this design challenge? And then using that to build out from, so that we're centered on our main purpose for our design. Okay, so those are some ways to think of design as a process, a more rational way of planning your design. Another way to think of instructional design is to think of like the types of things they design within an instructional design. So for example, this is design layers. Andrew Gibbons is coined as originally talking about design layers. And he says, look, we can take some instructional situation and it has all these different parts. Kind of like how a floor plan can have like the electrical program and the plumbing, and it has all these different layers of pieces that come together. It's the same idea for design layers. That in an instructional setting, it has some type of outcome. It has some content, some strategies and tools. And in some cases, we might even be able to trade out. We might have a goal and some strategies and tools and content. We might be able to even take out one set of content and replace it with a new set of content, but still use the other goals and strategies and tools. So that's another way to think of how we're doing instructional design, how we're working with these different pieces of the design. And then one more, I wanted to share this. This is, some of you who already know me, this is a framework that I've been working on with some other people, kind of 5 spaces for design and education. And it helps us think of design in a broader way. So I'm not going to explain it in depth here. You can go to a website. It's called talkingaboutdesign.com, and you can learn more about it there. I'm going to talk about this a little bit more when we're talking about reframing problems, because sometimes we assume that what we need to create is an artifact. It's an object or like a lesson or something. And sometimes we can actually create different things. Like we can design an experience for someone. We can design like a new type of system, and we can even start influencing culture. So this is another framework that can help us think more about what we design and how those things that we design work together. Okay, so in this course, this is what we're going to do. All right. Your book, the Design for Learning book, uses this scaffolding. They talk about understand, explore, create, evaluate. Kind of as an overarching topics or phases of design. Now, it's challenging because they don't always go right in this order. They kind of jump around. And there's pieces of this design that will fit better in some places than others, but they could actually happen before that or after that. So we're going to have to be jumping around just a little bit as we go through and do activities in each of these areas. We also have a special emphasis in this course on curriculum because we want to be looking at curriculum design and then the ISTE standards, which are technology standards, and that's going to be part of your core project, your signature assignment. So that's something we're going to add on, but you'll see throughout the course we're going to be using these understanding, exploring, creating, evaluating terms. You'll also see it in the Design for Learning book. So that can help you kind of think about what these different pieces of instructional design that we're doing. All right, main takeaways from the first video, the first 2 videos, first week. First is remember that design is focusing on creating something for a particular situation. Instructional designers create plans in many different areas, including museums and construction booklets and all kinds of stuff. And that many instructional designers use a very systematic process to make sure that they design the most effective product. All right, thanks for listening, and stay tuned for week 2.